Now, we're going into the third questions, the leadership and choices. So, in this question, I think this is perhaps one of my favorites to do. And if you really want to showcase your ability and your experiences, this is the part that you can showcase that really at the deeper level. Um, the question is going to ask you about your leadership challenge and how you sort of make changes in your context. And they are going to ask you about demonstrating certain skills that you claim to have and, ways for you to be a catalyst of change, right? And so to approach these questions, a couple of tips that I've written here is to speak about an experience. An experience. Notice it's one. Well, it's just my personal take on that, because when you can really think about one particular experience that really hone who you are as a practitioner, as an academician, or as a particular worker, right? This can sort of shows the breadth of your transience, or the nuanced ways of you navigating the world through all these rigorous difficulties that you're going through. I don't even know what I'm talking about now. But essentially, you know if you can describe this particular one experience that you find to be quite memorable, something that's quite priceless to you, that taught you a particular lesson in your field, then this can be a gateway for you to explore something in depth rather than just listing, right? Nothing wrong with listing again, but if you are listing and you're just going on a surface level, then, you know, the interesting point, or perhaps the depth of you as a candidate, may not be reflected, right? So that's that. That's why I encourage to talk about one experience, or to the max, maybe two. Now, when you're talking about this meaningful experience, think about how you can manage to make some sort of tangible contributions. And tangible here just means concrete. You can see the contributions, you can see the change. And if you can't see the change, it's okay. Own it, but think about what sort of changes you have been making across the time when you were in that particular experience. This could be socially oriented. It could also be academically oriented. So it doesn't have to be social all the time. I think, when I was discussing with a couple of candidates, some of them are pro towards academic achievements, some of them are pro towards social achievements. I reckon it really boils down to, again, what sort of experiences are more meaningful to you. Some people find their academic experience to be much more meaningful than their social ones, and that's okay. It's just the transient of experience are quite different from one person to another. And leadership here mean does not always mean a position. It's not always mean that you're going to be a CEO or something. It could be that you're in a position where you can make a decision, and that particular decision that you make or that you formulated sort of affect many people in the process, or multiple people at least. So it's a symbolic position. It's not a real position. But if you were in a position of, decision making, then obviously that could also be one of the stories that you can display here. Last one is, you can try your very best to describe your experience in chronological fashion. It doesn't have to be chronological. I think chronological just means time, right? It could just very well mean that when you describe it, it sounds like a story. So you can, when you read it, it makes sense in terms of time and how you acquire things. You'll see that in my example. So as you can see on the sample, first paragraph, I'm talking about clarifying the scene, right? Setting the scene. So basically, this is me talking about what I've been doing in a particular project. So in early 2024, I was working in a project with a lot of people having a trauma, and it was 3 months. See, quite simple. In that 3 months, there's a lot of stigma around the village. That's setting the scene, right? Like a story. And then, so this is just how I try to solve the problem. So we turn to local spiritual leaders, and then we had this particular program, so that's our solution. So people would say that this is the resolve, but then I'm putting a bit of twist, or some people would call it the plot twist. Turns out it's not so easy to deal with a problem inside of the village. I'm talking about, people being labeled insane, and the spiritual leaders doesn't want us to be in touch with this particular people because there is a cursed energy behind it. So it becomes a sort of like a climax of the problem, right? And then this is also the climax of this resolution. So this is us, or me and my friends, talking about how do we actually deal with this problem that's quite systemic, instead of, you know, simple solutions by doing psychoeducation. We're actually trying to reach out to the shamans. We're also trying to reach out to the local spiritual leaders without any um, ego. And so this is my learning points. As you can see, it's quite simple. It's mimicking to a certain way a story, perhaps a fable, right? But everything is explained in a chronological manner, from the point of them, setting the scene and then showing the problem, and the problem is being resolved. But turns out there is a deeper problem that we didn't know or didn't anticipate, and then our resolve to that non-anticipated problem, and at the end, some learning points that we've gained. So this shows a transient of human journey. So that's that. That's for the leadership and choices. I hope this is helpful, and we're going to move on into the next one.